Following the success of his debut comic Turf, Jonathan Ross gives us the lowdown on his next project, geriatric superhero story Golden Age.
I wasn't sure whether I'd be working in TV again. And I thought, it feels a little unfair. Not really unfair, but it feels a little unfair purely because I would like to do some more. And then I sat to someone and said, you know what, I've just come up with this idea for a superhero who's being made to stop. Not that I saw myself as a superhero. Chatty Man's already taken, I believe. But, the idea, and so it came out of real life, and I think that's the best way to, if you're trying to do character stuff, I think, is if you can find something in it that there's just a kind of a resonance in either your own life or the life of those around you. And my wife's father lives with us, and he's kind of gradually eased into retirement now. And I was speaking to him a lot about him not liking the idea about kind of not being in the game anymore, even though he's got kind of the same life he had before, because he was lazy. But, but he kind of has still got the same friends, and he's still living in the city, so his life hasn't changed that much. But psychologically, there's been this huge change that he had to adapt to, which is that I do not have to get up and go somewhere every day, and I'm not needed in the same way. And even though all of us, sadly, the truth is we're all replaceable, no matter what job we're in and no matter what we do, we are all replaceable. But at the same time, you don't want to be told that you're leaving before you're ready to leave. So that's kind of what it's about.
But what about the plot?
Well, it's changing all the time. Golden Age is, we like the idea, don't we? I mean, we're definitely doing it, but it's just I want to get it as good as possible. Golden Age is essentially, it's a world where superheroes exist, and many of them you'll recognise. There's a patriotic hero, there's a dark knight, they're not all in the first story arc. There's a small story about a Superman type or kind of alien from another world, and everyone plays with archetypes these days. Marvel has characters that are a bit like the DC characters, they'll use that, who's the guy from The Authority, Midnighters like Batman and Apollo's like Superman, so I think you can play around with those archetypes as long as you don't lift too heavily. But this is essentially, it follows the story of a kind of patriotic hero like a Mr. USA or Uncle Sam who helped the war effort in America in the 40s, who is now, of course, is kind of in his 90s. But because he's an enhanced person, like a hero is, like Captain America would be, he's not really aged that much. So even though he's kind of like in his 90s, in our book, he's like a fit man in his late 40s, early 50s. But the government want to get rid of him because they're embarrassed by the whole thing. The idea of a man with a star on his chest running around, and it is something from the past. They're, anachronisms. So they want to get rid of him, so they're forcing him to retire. And all the heroes that they've gradually had and they used to use in the 70s and the 80s, and we've got an idea there was a cartoon series in the 70s with the one that we're playing around with. They've all gone now. They don't really use them. There's a couple left, the kids of the guy we're speaking about, Mr. USA. His children are still like the current patriarchal heroes, but they're playing them down now. They're moving on. They want to get rid of all this embarrassing baggage from the war years. But he doesn't want to go. He really doesn't want to give up. So he's furious about it. And he embarrasses everyone with the speech the president gives about him. He undermines the president. And it's all awful. And then he's forced to go to this retirement home. And this retirement home is basically a high security retirement home where they partially keep them in as well as keep other people out, where they're all people who used to have powers. So there's a stretchy guy who can't stretch that far anymore because he's got rheumatism, and we've kind of dropped him. We did have a kind of Submariner type character who the nurses have to make the bed wet before he gets in it at night. So you can play with some of the jokey ideas of aging and superheroes, but what happens is then there's a threat from outside, and the current heroes and the military can't do anything about it. So they think, great, we can get back in the saddle, let's do it. And the government, there's a character who hopefully you won't like, who's kind of used them. He says, okay, yeah, come over, but first of all, we've got to get this sorted. And then they find out there's another secret the government hidden, and they don't want them to get back in the game. They want to help them sort something else out and send that out to solve the problem. And then that gets complicated as well. So so maybe they get back in action, maybe they don't. You'll find out by about book 6. But it's hopefully works. And then we've kind of got a second storyline involving the heroes who didn't play ball, who are on a kind of Guantanamo Bay kind of secret island where they've got a real high security base where old people's home, where they keep them. And then there's another story maybe involving a New York mansion where all the old pulp heroes live. It's like the Shadows in there with the spider and all these So we're having fun throwing them all around.
And from the sounds of it, Golden Age will hit stands in early 2012.
But hopefully it'll be out next March. That's what we're shooting for. We'll start get 2 or 3 books under our belt before we start publishing, so we won't fall behind. And then and we're playing around. There's going to be maybe adverts in the back, some referring to the periods of comics. So there'll be adverts for cartoons they appeared in. There'll be a fan club as if that had been out at the time. There'll be stuff from the 40s and the 50s in it. So we're going to try and, if we get the space in the book, make it a bit richer and give you that idea. So there's a kind of reader-created aspect of it where you see stuff and you have to put it together in your own head, and it isn't spoon-fed for you too much, hopefully.